cut. We're back and we're bringing deep cuts. So, Kayla and I, ever since we moved here to Fayetteville, we have been watching every night the Olympic swimming trials on NBC, which has been pretty awesome. And we'll probably be doing the same once track and field starts. I think that starts tomorrow. But another thing that's back that ties into it is the fact that Katie Ledecky rules all of swimming. Like, she's still the GOAT. They did the 1500 freestyle event, which, for those of you who don't know, it's going to take at least like 16, 17 minutes.
That's a long way to swim.
Yeah, and she was, I don't think she ever, like, broke stride. Like, you could tell, like, a little more than halfway through, everybody was starting to slow down a bit. No, she ain't slowing down. She probably could have swam another 1,500 more.
So I'm kind of excited about swimming in particular this year because my wife was a swimmer all through high school. So that's an event I always enjoy watching during the Olympics anyways. But that'll be maybe a little bit more fun this go around. Patrick, I'm excited that we're getting to talk about the Olympic trials because let me ask you this question. This is where true sports nerddom for, I think, you and I, and if you're listening to the show, you were probably similar enough to us that you would agree with this. I love the Olympic trials and, of course, the Olympics because there are so many sports that you can't find on TV normally, and I'm a sucker for all of them, Patrick.
Yes.
All of them.
100%. I remember in college, I don't remember what was going on at the time, but like a bunch of us, we were staying at Joey's house, his parents' house in Jacksonville, and we happened to be watching the Olympics. Again, I don't know why we were there or anything, but there was speed walking.
Yes.
Going on, and we were like tuned in 100% to some speed walking.
It is so dumb how entertaining I find speed walking competitions, Patrick.
It shouldn't be a thing, but during the Olympics, you put it on.
Have you ever tried it?
No, I've never tried it.
So, there's a whole lot of rules to it, obviously. But, dude, it is actually, legitimately hard. Like, to walk fast, but you have to have one foot on the ground at all times. Like, it is actually really, really hard to walk super fast that way. So that's very impressive. One of my favorite Olympic memories, we were actually watching the opening ceremonies to the 2012s when I was in college. So the London Olympics. And we were watching it with a girl who was from Brighton. She worked with us. It was during the summer, obviously. And so those of us who had stayed and worked the summer were there. So we got the idea, hey, let's all get together, watch the Olympics, just kind of hang out, chill. So we're watching the opening ceremony with her. And they start playing the national anthem for England, UK, which is, of course, God Save the Queen. Patrick, I don't know if you know this. It is also the tune of My Country 'Tis of Thee. So...
Oh, is it?
So I'm going to give our good buddy John Mark Pierce, or as he is in my phone, Benedict Arnold, a shout out here for a second. Because me and him, at the top of our lungs, sang My Country 'Tis of Thee over God Save the Queen, and the look on this poor girl's face. Because she did not know that was a song that she looked at us like, what are you doing? Like, how are you both making up the words to this? And we were like, oh, do you not know that you guys stole this song from us and, played it up a whole bit just to give her a hard time? But so that was a blast. But Patrick, let me ask you this real quick, and then we'll move on to Maya's back. Give me your off-the-wall favorite sport that you like to watch in the Summer Olympics. Obviously not the Winter Olympics. We're just talking summer.
I'm glad you decided to ask me this question off the dome because I'm looking at the schedule right now.
I'm a little disappointed. You have to look at the schedule because I can tell you mine off the dome without
It's
looking.
not that I have to look it up in order to tell you the events. It's I want to know when they're going to go down
Okay,
next month.
that's fair. I like this.
I'm looking at like the TV schedule and all
Perfect.
that.
Okay. I retract my statement.
Archery is pretty tight.
I love archery.
The kayak events are awesome.
Yes.
I still don't understand fencing, but I can definitely watch some fencing.
I watched the snot out of some fencing.
One that is boring as hell, but I'll still watch all the time. Rowing.
Oh, look, that is not. I'm not even going to call that boring. We watch. So there's the lake that we can. There's a little lake in the middle of the city that we all go. Everybody kind of goes to work out at, walk around, whatever. Yeah. And they have crew. They have like a big crew dome that houses all the boats, and then like SMU kids and Highland Park kids, the rich kids in Dallas all do it.
Well, I mean, if you're rowing, yeah.
Right. Patrick, I'm going to give you one that I absolutely love watching. I love watching the pistol shooting.
That one's fun. Another one.
Did you see that super old lady that's in it?
Yes.
Yes, I'm super jacked. Look, that's one of those that I'm like, okay, I'll watch it. I used to love when I was growing up, obviously, like, I remember the Australia Olympics. The ones that are farther away and on a weird time zone, I love. Because I love being up at like 3 o'clock in the morning watching pistol shooting, and you're like, when in the world what? Yeah, like, look, I know Summer Olympics, it's gymnastics. Like, that's the one that everybody cares about. All of a sudden, you've not cared. And look, Simone Biles is incredible. I'm expecting her to do something absolutely ridiculous off the wall that we've never seen in gymnastics before, and that's going to be really cool. But like you mentioned, stuff like the kayaking, stuff like pistol shooting. Obviously, archery is one of my favorites. I love watching the skeet shooting. I
am also just. It's an electric factory for me whenever we get some table tennis going on.
Oh, table tennis! Table tennis at like 3 in the morning is another goodie. When you've got a Chinese guy versus a guy from like Vietnam or something, and they're just smacking it back and forth. Electric factory. You are correct.
If you want to know like the definition of like an Olympic hardo like us, it's being up at 3 in the morning with like a bag of Doritos in your room watching table tennis.
Right. This is going to be an
Olympic hardo.
And this is going to be a good one for that because it's going to be Tokyo, obviously, so time zone's going to be a little wonky. And I'm not a huge fan of watching like the primetime NBC when they're just kind of showing, especially when they're showing stuff that's already happened. Like, obviously, you and I get on Twitter, you're on sports Twitter, you're going to see who wins, you're going to see the spoilers, so you got to be up to actually watch it. And like you said, a lot of the Olympics just are an electric factory of people who, a lot of times, I love the ones, and I'm going to make a suggestion, Patrick. This is something the Olympics should consider doing, and I've always said this. They need to, at all times, have a dual screen going to where you can watch the Olympic athletes doing it, and then at the same time, you watch Joe Schmo that they pulled off the streets doing the exact same thing. I need to watch a Chinese versus Taiwan badminton match, and then at the same time, watch 4 guys they pulled off the street in Chicago, Illinois, playing badminton.
Go to rec center and just watch them play badminton.
Right. I need that going on. I need a track where like they put it on the inside, the very inside lane of the track. They've got just some schmuck running the 100-meter dash next to Usain Bolt and crew. Like, I need that for every single event because I think, look, I mean, obviously, you and I, and obviously the Olympic hardos are going to be very, like, you understand how good of an athlete these people are. You understand, like, watching, especially if you've ever swam. Like, you look at these guys swimming through the pool like sharks, and you realize, I can't do anything close to that. Like, I'm lucky if I make it to the other end of the pool. But I would just I love seeing those next to it. I would love to see those next to each other just so like the casuals can really see like how ridiculously good these athletes are. Because, obviously you see in the Olympics, you see a lot of sports that people do recreationally and you just, I think, don't understand how good these people are at it, even though obviously we're seeing the best in the world do it. So that is a very, very good is back, Patrick. We will be talking plenty of Olympics over the next however long we need to. But Patrick, I'm going to go for my is back with something else international flavor and something else for the sports hardos. Patrick, it's the Euros. This is
Europe, right?
This summer, as bad as last summer was for sports because of everything getting canceled, this summer has been great so far because a lot of these tournaments, a lot of these things are trying to essentially make up for it. And so far, the Euros have been a lot of fun to watch. They're on that sweet spot time where if you can sneak it while you're working, you can watch all 3 games during the group stage. They've played, I think all groups have, almost all groups have played too. We got a couple more. Patrick, tomorrow, unfortunately, the one I'm not going to be able to watch is the one that I would really like to watch. My Czech Republic, who opened up Group D with a win, are playing again tomorrow. But you know, it's been an entertaining tournament. There have been a lot of good games. There's been a lot of interesting. There have been a lot of penalties, and so therefore penalty kicks. But only Cristiano Ronaldo has scored his PK. Everybody else has had one saved. There was one earlier today. I think it was in the Austria game, or was it? No, it was in the Ukraine North Macedonia game where a PK got saved, but then also the rebound ended up getting knocked in by the guy taking the PK. So it's been a very, very good one. They've changed it up a little bit. There are more teams this year, this go around. So it's been very, very fun. Obviously, there are some teams to keep an eye on. Belgium has been incredible early. Italy looks unbeatable right now. Wales has been pretty good, even though they drew with Switzerland. I believe that was in the opening game of the tournament. Czech Republic looks really, really good. They're in a tough group with England and Croatia is a little bit better than I think a lot of people realize. So those are some teams to keep up on. And then, of course, you've got, Group E, you've got Slovakia, Spain, Sweden, Poland. That's a pretty tough group. But then you get to Group F, and you've got Portugal, France, Germany, and Hungary, which I'm going to call the group of death for this tournament. Maybe not the best idea to call. It's what it's called. Maybe not the best idea to call the Germany group the group of death in the Euros. But that's the other, especially when France is in it too. Maybe a little World War II and 1-y. But that is a very, very good group. I think they play again. Let's see, what's tomorrow? Friday. So I think, is it Sunday, I guess? That they would play their next group games. But man, it's going to be real fun when it gets to the knockout round, especially. But if you need to get some sports in during the day, the Euros are here for you. And I've been having a blast with them. They've been good. And so keep an eye on that and go Czech Republic.
Let's go Euros.
Yeah, so a lot of international flavor early in the show. Patrick, let's go a little semi-international because there's some international players still hanging out in it. We're going to talk about a sport, Patrick, that you absolutely love, and that is basketball. We're going to talk some NBA. We're in the playoffs, obviously, and we're getting a little deep in the playoffs now, Patrick. What are we in the? We're in the semis. So we're
almost in the conference final.
Almost to the conference finals. So Patrick, let's jump in. We're going to talk Philly. Let's just start there. Philly is the 1 seed out of the East, and man, just absolutely imploding. Is that safe to say?
That is very safe to say. So my question is, how does Doc Rivers continue to pull off these feats where, I mean, he's got clearly some of the best teams, and outside of that Boston team that won, which he had no excuse not to win. But, I mean, look what he had with the prime time Clippers with, like, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin. Look what he's got now. I mean, look at all the teams that he's had or he should have won and somehow just, like, shats the bed.
Well, I saw on Twitter earlier today, somebody said Doc Rivers is one loss away from being the next coach on Last Chance U. which I thought was an incredible,
Perfectly fair.
an
Perfectly
incredible,
fair.
yeah, a really good pull. Also, that makes me. You mentioned Doc Rivers and the prime LA Clippers, and that makes me think of Jimmy Fallon. Whatever, he's got some decent stuff every now and then. He used to do a bit, and he may still do it. Wheel of Impressions, and he did one with Jamie Foxx, and they did Wheel of Impressions, but it was singing, and it's incredible because Jamie Foxx is just incredible at singing. He's great at impressions. He's also
He's great at
hilarious.
everything.
But my favorite thing about it is he at one point in time gets a little like too high. And kind of starts to lose his voice, and then goes on like a 45-second run about Doc Rivers coaching the LA Clippers, and he gets into a whole thing about it's not Blake Griffin's fault. And so when we pause this now, if you're listening, and go listen to it, Patrick, I will probably force you to listen to it with me when we're done recording this episode, because it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite things that's ever happened. But yeah, man, look, I don't know. We've got to start asking a question about this Philadelphia team, I think maybe, and this might be the time to do it. Like, how long are we trusting the process? Like, I know that's kind of overplayed at this point, but, man, you're sitting there and you've had a decent roster, and it's always been, hey, trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. Well, man, the process is telling me that Ben Simmons still can't shoot the ball from three-point line, and he still can't shoot the ball from the free throw line. So at what point do we trash the process and start over?
Yeah, like, obviously, the Sixers used to be the laughing stock of the league. And now, look at where they have gotten. They were number one seed in the East. You can say all you want to about the East. The East is definitely improving. But, I mean, they're playing against this Hawks team, which it was definitely a feat to even get to where they were. To even play against the Sixers. Nobody really put them in a shot to beat the Sixers to go to the conference finals. I feel like if the Hawks were to lose this series, they probably overachieved a little bit. Like, if you want to compare processes, they maybe got one step ahead of where they were projected to be. But, I mean, you mentioned it, like, with this roster, what they've done over the last, 10 years, at what point is it time to admit this is as far as the quote-unquote process can take you? So, I mean, I didn't really understand, and this is what I feel like the NBA does a lot of times, and you can say the same for other leagues, but I feel like the NBA is very bad about it. I feel like they're very bad about latching on to one prospect for the entire year in terms of, oh, he's it, he's the number one guy. Like, well, what has he really done to be the number one guy?
Right.
We sure there's not somebody better than him? And they do it all the time. And, I mean, I'm not saying, for example, I hate to use this as an example, but, Cade Cunningham was great, but at the same time, are we sure we're doing the full evaluations on everyone?
Right.
Are we 100% certain that he should be the number one guy? There's been so many years in the past during the NBA draft process where, we've just latched our claws into one player, and then once it's time for him to suit up, he kind of did about the same as he did in college, maybe a little bit less because he's playing against better talent, but, we've seen it time and time again, and I feel like Ben Simmons is just a prime example. Is he a great is he a solid basketball player? Yeah.
Well,
is he great? I don't know if he's great.
Well, here's the deal, Patrick.
I certainly don't know if he's a superstar.
I think I'm gonna steal it. I'm gonna steal the phrase. Ben Simmons is who we thought he is. If you go back and watch, and you and I feel like are maybe a little bit quicker to be to say, get hyped about a guy, but then also be like, okay, well, this is what he actually does. And you see it all the time when you and I talk football. I feel like you and I are very honest about, okay, well, this guy is good, but this is where he stinks. And
yeah,
I think if you look back at it, I mean, I'm not to throw too many names out there, but it's like how I've been saying for years that Lamar Jackson is not the most accurate passer in the world. And what do we see this week? The Baltimore Ravens said, you can't post pictures of him throwing the football anymore. Why? Because he's not that accurate, and you don't want him looking bad in practice. And you go back to that.
Did they say that?
Yeah, that actually is a thing that happened. Yeah, they told the media not to post picture or videos of him throwing the football after he threw that one duck the other day. Yeah, but look, what I'm getting at is you go back and look at his collegiate film, and that was there. We knew that was a thing. We knew that he is the type of quarterback that can get beat if you force him to pass the football. Now, why do I say that in reference to Ben Simmons? If you go back and watch those LSU teams, he is elite at a couple things. But when you really look at his game, there are holes. And we knew that in college, and it was a question mark in college, but then everybody was like, oh, no, like he's one of those can't miss guys, like you can't miss on him. Well, he can't make it from three. He's not shooting from three. Like, did we miss on, is he a good player? Yes. Is he a great role player? Probably. Fine. But he is not the guy that's going to take that franchise to the next level. And I think we've seen enough, we've got enough years of it, of him and Joel Embiid together to say that. Like, I don't, again, regular season is whatever. Regular season is kind of bunk in the NBA. If you just your whole goal is to make the playoffs. And especially in the East, even though the East is better than it has been in the last, decade and a half, it's not quite the laughingstock it once was, especially with the Bucks, looking at Atlanta now. And of course with, you look at least during the season, this Philadelphia team, and of course Brooklyn. Don't only forget Brooklyn. But man, you start looking at it and you go, you look at these guys and you've got to start saying, can we miss on him? Well, if he's not going to be the guy that we think he is, if he's not actually good at everything we need him to be good at, are we really doing him a disservice by saying he's the guy? If you take a guy like Ben Simmons late in the first, in the second, pair him with another player of that same sort of caliber that does the things that he can't do, great, fine, awesome. Ben Simmons probably has a great career, and your team is probably in good shape. Man, when you put him on a team like Philadelphia, and he's the guy to do a lot, essentially, they've got a hole in that roster of things that just aren't getting done because Ben Simmons is their point guard. And I think they're going to find, especially when you come into a matchup against a team like Atlanta, who's got a guy like Trae Young who can do everything at that position, like you're going to find yourself in an absolute dogfight. And especially if you're going to just implode the way Philadelphia did last night. So I think it's time to start asking the question. Obviously, you and I are, but it's really time to start considering, what do we do if we're Philadelphia?
Yeah, and they put themselves in a weird situation because obviously, if you're playing this deep into the playoffs, you're not going to have a high draft pick, and it's really as tough as it is to nail talent if you're a lottery pick, it's still tough to find quality talent once you get really deep into the draft. Now, we've seen plenty of situations where a guy was a second-round pick and turns out being great. Like, we can name plenty of different scenarios. That's really not always, like, there's plenty of drafts also where if you're not picking in the lottery, you better find that one or two guys who are going to be quality role players or a quality starter, because if you don't, the rest of this draft is doo-doo, and they're going to be playing overseas in 2 years.
Right. It's not the NFL. The NBA draft is a whole different animal. It's not like the NFL draft. The NFL draft, you can find undrafted free agent guys that are incredible, that end up having really good careers. You can find guys in every single round that are really, really good. In the NBA, man, it's a lot more of these are the guys. If you better hope that you get the right guy, or you better be able to find a guy who's a good role player that you hope to get 4 or 5 years out of, and then maybe let him go sign a big contract somewhere else. Because there's so few elite basketball players, and in basketball, we've talked about this a lot, I think probably in the past, that, basketball is the sport, I feel like, of the major sports where one guy really makes a difference. One guy determines whether you are an elite basketball team or whether you're just a mediocre basketball team. And then obviously, if you can stack 2 or 3 of those guys, you're a super elite team. So let's move on, Patrick, to Milwaukee, Brooklyn, which is an interesting series, largely because is Brooklyn going to be healthy enough to finish out this series? They've got the 3-2 lead right now, but man, they're in the driver's seat for this series, but with their injury issues, man, we might see an upset if Atlanta pulls off their series against Philly. Because, man, if they just don't have anybody, what are they going to do?
I mean, you go into every single game of the series and you wonder, all right, is somebody which out of the big 3 is going to step up, or is someone going to be able to pair with KD? And it's so strange. Well, it's strange that it's not strange. It's kind of strange that the healthy one is KD, but it's not strange because he didn't play last year. So he didn't play before coronavirus. He didn't play in the bubble. So I mean, he's probably the healthiest player for the most part in the entire realm of the playoffs right now, because he didn't play in the bubble. He didn't play it all last year.
Right. Well, and because of all that, he actually took probably a little bit longer to come back even than he could have, because he's like, this season got stretched a little bit. That's why LeBron's over there whining and complaining, because he's sitting in Cancun because he's got nothing to do because his team lost.
What do you mean he's got nothing to do? He's trying to promote Space Jam 2.
Yeah, that movie's going to be garbage.
I'm not watching that at all.
I refuse to besmirch the original Space Jam by letting my eyeballs even glimpse. I saw those terrible jerseys. We've talked about those terrible jerseys.
Yeah, we talked about the jerseys already.
I saw those jerseys. I said, nah, not even. Not even.
I wasn't going to watch it, even if they had, like, the drippiest jerseys of all time. Still not going to watch. You know why? Because Space Jam is an instant classic. You're not going to ruin Space Jam. I don't care who you put in it.
I'll tell you this, Patrick. I'll watch Thunderstruck again before I watch Space Jam 2.
What is Thunderstruck? Is that the KD movie?
That's the Kevin Durant movie.
I've never even seen Thunderstruck.
You've not seen that movie?
No. You know why? Because KD is probably a terrible actor.
He's not great, and he's not in it a ton, and it's not a great movie. But it's basically like Mike, but KD instead of Michael Jordan shoes. Some kid in, I forget the whole. I think it's some kid in.
Probably some kid in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, some little short white kid gets KD's shoes and can all of a sudden dunk. Before we move on to the Western Conference, though, can we talk about how I think Kevin Durant has my favorite nickname in all of sports? You know the one I'm talking about, right? The Slim Reaper.
Oh, yeah. That is pretty exciting.
I lose it every time. And I love that in a weird way. Like, Kevin Durant's kind of like the anti, like, everything you want out of an athlete in terms of, like, he's, like, super petty on Twitter and social media and stuff. But, it's something about Kevin Durant. You're like, I'll let him do it. Like, it's like if it was anybody else, you would hate it. But because it's Kevin Durant, you're like, man, but he's the best basketball player in the world, and he's still going to be petty like that.
Like, you're acting like a total baby, but you are so good at basketball.
And then, and he's also kind of super funny every once in a while, so that works in your favor too. Let's move over, Patrick, to the Western Conference, and we've already got one series decided. NBA MVP Nikola Jokic gets sent home by the Phoenix Suns in a 4-0 sweep. That guy who beat up the Denver fan after the Denver fan tried to jump him. Suns in 4.
Suns in 4.
You don't want to see fans fighting in a game, but if you're gonna punch somebody and then the guy comes back and and deals you several massive. Look, we don't condone fan violence at all. I think we can.
No, you know why? Because we would probably both lose. I know I would definitely lose the fight, so I'm not going to promote something where
depends on who I got to
losing in 100% of the time.
Depends on who I got to fight. Look. Here's the thing.
It's not my brother. I'm going to lose.
Somebody, it may have been the pod guys from Pat McAfee's crew that were talking about it way back. It's been early in their run, so it's probably been a year or two now. We're talking about like you're an idiot if you get in a fight at a sporting event because you don't know who is a UFC fighter or who's been like MMA fighting for 18 years at this point.
Like martial arts background.
Right. So look, I would never start a fight. I would try my best to avoid being in a fight for sure. I've been in fights as a kid. Like I had to do, you have to defend yourself sometimes as a kid. So I've been there, done that. And I'm not like a great fighter. So I know exactly where I stand. I know I'm not going to just beat somebody up on the side of the, like, if I get put in that situation, I'm probably going to lose, so I'm not going to do it. But I love that guy in the middle of beating this dude up, who tried to beat him up, is looking at the guy's buddy, and just like, what? Sons in 4, man. Sons in 4. And it's just so good. Like, don't be an idiot. Don't start a fight, over a game. Like, we're talking about a game, Patrick. Like, don't start a fight over a sporting event of an athlete that features athletes who probably will never know who you are. Granted, this guy, I think, what's his name? I can't think of the kid's name now. Bought him conference finals tickets, or is giving Devin Booker. There we go. I didn't say it because I almost said Dylan Brooks, who I knew played for Memphis. And I was like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. Don't get it wrong. Devin Booker went ahead and got him a signed jersey and whatnot, and got him conference final tickets. But I think that one's a little bit of a surprise to people who hadn't been paying attention to this Phoenix Suns team, which is a really, really good basketball team.
Yeah, because of Chris Paul.
Shock of all shocks.
For one, Chris Paul, I feel like, just doesn't age. And he can be a bit of a dick, but you cannot argue with the fact that every team he's played on, he has made them a lot better. You look at the Oklahoma City team that he was on.
Yeah.
Like, for one, nobody really thought that he was even going to play with that team. Everybody just thought, all right, he's going to get bought out. He's going to be like a part of a big three somewhere. There's no way he's playing with this Oklahoma City team. Well, he did. Yeah. And not only that, but he made up a playoff team. A team that really didn't deserve, shouldn't have been a playoff team. But it's Chris Paul. And nobody really, I say nobody, a lot of people have come out over the past, and some people have said they don't really enjoy playing with Chris Paul. Maybe just certain egos don't mix with Chris very well.
I can see that.
But it's not a surprise. But at the same time, he is probably one of the best point guards. And you can see that with Phoenix.
Well, and I think he's one of those guys that at the end of his career, we will all look back on it and be like, man, he's one of the best point guards of all time. And I don't think he gets mentioned in that vein a lot because of some of the teams he's been on, because of maybe how some people feel about Chris Paul. But man, he's been around he's like almost like the Frank Gore of point guards. Like, I think that if I had to NFL comp him, that's probably what I'd say. Like, Frank Gore has been good for a long time. Now, he's not one of the even by default almost, Frank Gore is one of the best running backs of all time just because he's been around forever. And you don't see
He's been around for like 20 years.
Yeah. And man, I feel like Chris Paul is kind of in that same vein of, has he been the best player alive at any point in time? I don't think so. But he has consistently been one of, if not the best point guard for it feels like almost 20 years at this point. So I think Phoenix is a super, super dangerous team. We'll see how the whole COVID situation with Chris Paul plays out.
That's why I really hope if sports conspiracy theories exist, which we all know that they do.
Oh, absolutely, especially the NBA.
Exactly. I really hope that the Utah-LA series goes 7, gives Chris Paul a couple of extra days in quarantine, whatever, and then once game 1, maybe game 2 hits, he's ready to go. He's ready to come back.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, let's
also, I just want that because I want to see Utah keep going because obviously of Mike Conley. But I think that would just be a better series anyway.
Yeah, well, let's talk real quick about that Utah Clippers series. Clippers are up 3-2 right now. Let's see. I don't know what today is. What is today? Is today the 17th? So that game's 17th. Tomorrow. Game 6 tomorrow.
Yep. Game.
Like you, I feel like all these series that are left are going 7 games. That's Matt conspiracy. Well, no, I take that back. I think Philly-Atlanta ends tomorrow with Atlanta finishing off that series. I think Philly's just going to kind of continue their implosion. But I think Milwaukee-Brooklyn has to go 7 games. The NBA is going to make it go 7 games. And I think this Utah-LA Clippers game or series is going to go 7. Who do you think actually comes out on top of that? Kawhi being hurt definitely plays into this a little bit. And it's hard to go against Utah being the number 1 seed and them having a 1-2 matchup in the Western Conference Finals. What do you think?
I really just think that Utah is the overall better team, but they just have more depth than the Clippers have. Obviously, like you mentioned, Kawhi's injury is never going to help. I'm looking at LA's team right now. Obviously, they have guys like Patrick Beverly. I always forget they have DeMarcus Cousins on their team. But man, we've seen vintage Paul George in this playoffs, and we've seen Paul George in the bubble, which was very much dog do. Like, we could have put up similar numbers because all we had to do was run around. I just don't. For me, for them to take this series 6 games is a feat in itself, just with the roster they have. But you take Kawhi out of this, I don't really see how they even win Game 6, to be perfectly honest. I know that the Jazz have a couple of injuries themselves, including with Mike Conley, but he hasn't played all series. And to be perfectly honest, they can easily, even if Kawhi was playing, they could have won this series.
Yeah.
Without Mike. It's just, extra depth and an added luxury to have him playing. They've just got so much depth on this team, and I would be very shocked if we see it after tomorrow night. We see that this goes 7. I would be very shocked.
So before we move on, is Brooklyn your odds-on favorite to win still? Or are you going Utah?
I'm going Utah. Utah is kind of my favorite throughout, and Utah is still my favorite.
All right. So when Patrick's wrong, you heard it here first.
That's right.
No, I hope you're right. I like Utah. Donovan Mitchell's a fun player. Obviously, we'd love that from Mike Conley. Just to get that on his resume. Speaking of a guy,
I think everyone else would love to see Utah go down because everyone hates Rudy Gobert.
Well, yes, that's fair, but Mr. I starting a COVID lockdown.
If it's supposed to be him, someone else is going to be the first person to get it. It's just like the way it went down with Rudy that everybody hates his guts.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing too. You look back on it, and that was such a like at the time such a whatever, but it was like that was the world stopping. It felt like
Yeah,
that was the first thing that it was like, oh, things gonna be
it's
different.
like we can blame him for the entire world shutting down.
Yeah, I should Aaron and I sue him for essentially getting our wedding canceled.
You should sue him for. Everyone should sue him for lost wages.
I should sue him for that and for us not getting to go to Estonia for our honeymoon. I like
Yeah,
this idea. I should discuss
yeah.
that with a lawyer. I should find a lawyer and discuss that maybe.
He's making over $27 million this year, so
That
he could probably cover the cost.
yeah, I just say, listen, we'll settle out of court. Just send us to Estonia for a week and we'll call it good. For
Yeah,
2 weeks and we'll call it good.
problem solved.
Yeah, I like that idea. All right, let's move on, Patrick, and do some shames. We haven't got to shame people in a long time, and I feel like it's much overdue. So let's get to it.
Shame, shame, I know your name.
Do you have one or two, Patrick?
I have just one, and it cuts me deep,
Oh,
but
yeah. You know what?
I've got it.
I'll let you go first then.
This one, I mean, whenever I say this, obviously I've attempted to play the sport, and whenever I did, funny story. My shame it kind of goes out. It's not like you guys suck. It's like, dang, that's a shame. It's to the University of Arkansas baseball team.
Oh, yeah.
So, funny story of how terrible of an athlete I am. So I think, in the fourth grade. This is one of my only attempts to play any type of sport outside of soccer, which is the only sport I enjoyed playing. So I was playing baseball, and I go to practice without a hat. And I'm in the outfield, so you knew I was trash. And coach hits a pop fly. I mean, that thing was a moonshot. It gets lost in the sun. I don't have a hat on.
Oh no.
Next thing I know, I'm waking up in the living room of the place that we're practicing at, because that moonshot hit me straight in the dome, knocked me out,
Oh no.
and I had this bulging, bruised, whatever on my forehead for weeks. And I had a tattoo of the seam of the baseball for probably 2 solid weeks.
So that's kind of funny. I was very good at baseball. To the point that my sister threw a fit when I quit baseball because she was so upset. She was like, "You're so good at this," but it was a case of I had been on terrible teams for 3 years in a row, and I was just tired of losing. And I said, "Yeah, I'll play football instead, I'll focus on football instead." But similarly, when I was a young kid, a young lad, we were at practice. We had a scrimmage, and both teams got one of the coaches. And one of the coaches was up to bat. He hits a grounder, or he hits a little seeing eye single out into right field or something. The kid throws it to me, the shortstop. I'm covering second at that point, and the coach thought, I'll be funny, and made the turn and started running towards second, and so he got caught in a pickle. If you don't know what a pickle is, go look it up, go find it. Pickle in baseball, throwing back and forth. So we're running the pickle, working on the coach, and he thought, oh, I'm gonna be real funny, and when Matt comes in to tag me, I'm gonna flip his hat, and that would have been a great thing to do. It would have been funny. It might have worked, and then I might not have tagged him. But when he went to flip my hat, instead he basically punched me in the nose. And ever since then, I've had nosebleeds, Patrick. To be fair to him, and R.I.P., he's dead now, but to be fair to him, he felt terrible and immediately apologized. And called my mom, got everybody over there. It's like, I'm so sorry this happened. Anyways, so wait, Patrick, now I need you to say it again because I had a little bit of a computer freeze and didn't get to do the drop. So who gets your shame this week?
Unfortunately, it's Arkansas baseball.
The dream is dead.
That one's perfect.
Yeah.
The dream was for winning the national championship.
Yeah, it was a little bit crushing. I decided that the S in Woo Pig Suey, WPS, stand for sadness instead. I like what Roger, our good buddy Roger, said after I said that. He said it's Woo Pain Sadness, which is very, very fitting for the Arkansas Rays. Patrick, my shame is going to be very, very short. My shame goes out to, I'm just going to say idiots.
Shame, shame, I know your name.
And here's why, Patrick. I don't know if you saw this. We talked Euros earlier. Cristiano Ronaldo, obviously one of the best players of all time. Press conference after the game. He's very health conscious. I don't know. You've probably seen a picture of Cristiano Ronaldo without a shirt on. Dude's ripped.
He's probably never drank anything other than water his entire life.
Right. So he basically said, get this Coke out of here. Get this Coca-Cola out of here. As a result, Patrick, nearly $4 billion worth of shares, or however stocks work. I don't understand stocks. Basically, $4 billion in revenue was lost, according to the stocks people, because he said, get this Coca-Cola out of here. And so that's why the shame goes out to idiots. Don't let that kind of thing determine what you do with your money. We know Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't drink Coca-Cola. We know 98% of the athletes who sponsor or are sponsored by things that aren't healthy probably don't use them. Just if you're going to drink Coca-Cola, drink Coca-Cola. Don't let what Cristiano Ronaldo says to move out of the way affect that. So they get all those idiots who deal with that kind of thing get my shame this week because that's just stupid.
Yeah. If anyone wants to get an idea of how little Matt and I know about stocks, the only thing I've ever done in terms of the good old stock exchange, like 2 weeks ago, I, on a whim, bought $10 worth of Dogecoin.
How's that
working? The only thing I've ever done. Have never done anything else. I might buy $10 more of something random later, but I felt fancy doing that, and I might have just wasted $10. But that's the only thing I know about stocks is that Dogecoin exists.
Is it doing you any good? You made any money off of it yet?
Let me crack open the old Coinbase.
I mean, the fact that I called them those stock guys, Patrick, should tell everybody not to take stock advice.
I have
from this show.
Portfolio for one, I have a portfolio.
Oh, you sound fancy.
I sound fancy AF.
Oh, yes. My name is Patrick. I have a portfolio.
Look at my portfolio.
Oh.
I have a portfolio balance of $7.45.
So you've lost money.
Yes.
This is why I've never been involved in the whole stock game. It makes no sense to me. I don't understand it. Aaron and I saw a commercial for something the other day, and it on Hulu, and we're like, she was like, I don't get this, and I was trying to explain it, what I thought it might be, and then a couple days later, looking back, and I go, why would I even suggest that I know anything about it? I know so little about stocks, and all that stuff. It just seems made up to me. Like, it's one of those things. Listen, the only advice that you should take from Patrick and I on stocks are NFL draft related and whether stock up, stock down. That is the only stock advice you should ever ever
only
take
time
from Patrick.
stock is ever mentioned, and I'm like, oh, I get that.
Yeah.
It is definitely like prospect stock. Other than that, you can take my advice and not buy Dogecoin because I lost money.
Speaking of stocks, Patrick, your division, stock up, stock down. Your Colts stock down a little bit because stock up for the Tennessee Titans, I think is fair to say. Because what we're going to talk about next, obviously we missed it. We weren't here for it because, of course, this would happen. Julio Jones, we talked about it pre us leaving for vacation and whatnot. But Julio Jones has been traded. Obviously, you guys know this at this point, to the Tennessee Titans. Patrick, what do you think that does for that team? Does that move them into we are Super Bowl contenders, or does that kind of keep them in that same area that they occupied already of the we're probably going to win the division, we're probably going to be a threat in the playoffs, but at the end of the day, you don't got to worry too much?
I would say that's a perfect description. And I don't say that as well, he has to play them twice a year. Or, well, he probably wanted them, they didn't get them. We do have to play them twice a year. And yes, I am scared. And no, we didn't get them, but I also didn't think that we would ever even make an effort to because Chris Ballard does not trade draft picks just willy-nilly like that. And he's also already basically given up a first-rounder for this upcoming draft for Carson Wentz. And he would probably like to make a selection at some point.
Maybe.
So, giving up a 1 and a 2 in the same year was not going to happen. So, going into this season before the trade happened, they had A.J. Brown, fantastic wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, they basically had Josh Reynolds, who is not scaring anyone. So, they probably needed some help there. And last season, they had A.J. Brown, again, the same fantastic wide receiver. And they also had Corey Davis, who had a breakout year last year.
Yeah.
So they needed a true number 2 because Corey Davis was the number 2. So what do? They go ahead and make this trade for Julio Jones, which he's probably still going to be the number 2. And by he still, I'm saying Julio. I don't think A.J. Brown, he's probably going to lose a couple of targets. But I don't think this makes him the number 2 receiver.
Right.
I just don't. Julio's getting older. He's had a couple of injuries. Julio also just isn't familiar with the offense like A.J. Brown is. So he's probably still the number 1 guy.
Right. Well,
that being said, you still have the rest of the team. The rest of the team is mainly the defense, who isn't that great. They've added a lot of pieces, but they've also added a lot of pieces who are really just a bunch of wild cards. Whenever it's maybe age, injury, a mix of the two, or maybe just decent play that's not really scaring you. Like, they've tried to improve the defense quite a bit. It's just, is it all going to play out at the same time?
Right.
So, they're going to win the division. I will easily admit that. They will win the division. They will probably win their first game in the playoffs. And that's probably it.
Well, this is an interesting one for me because I agree with you on the idea that I think it's likely that A.J. Brown's still your number 1 receiver here. You start looking at their roster, you got some guys like Cody Hollister still hanging around. You've got guys like Racey McMath who just got signed or who just got drafted that we don't really know. You mentioned Josh Reynolds, and nobody's scared of Josh Reynolds. I think he's a good third receiver in this group, maybe. But
he'll probably do some like punt returns too.
Right, but let's be honest about what this team is. This team is still Derrick Henry, and as long as Derrick Henry is the running back of that team and healthy, I don't think. Look, this is a very Seahawksy roster, a very Seahawksy offense, and I actually do kind of mean that as a slight. Like, I kind of mean that in the way that Seattle is so run first, or has been in the past. I think that's what we're going to see out of this Tennessee team still. Getting Julio does not automatically mean you spread everything out 5 wide and throw the football like you're the Rams in the year 2000 with Kurt Warner and the greatest show on turf. Like, that's not what's going to happen here. And I think you can look at what's on that roster and just, you mentioned the defense. The defense doesn't scare me at all. I'm not going into that game, and I think you mentioned, you said they'll win the division, and you're not scared. You're pretty sure of that. I'm not convinced they're going to win the division even. I think it's very up in the air between them and the Colts for sure. And the Jaguars, of course, are an absolute wildcat or a wild card, and they could cause some issues. Who knows what's going to happen with.
There's some wildcat options there as well.
Also, yeah, there absolutely are some wildcat options with Tim Tebow being there. Go old school wildcat like the old Hogs used to do.
Yeah.
But again, to get into it, look, Julio's 32. I think he's lost a step or two. He's not quite as dominant as he once was. Look, is he still an incredibly good receiver? Yes. Would I have loved for the Seahawks to get him? Yes. This is not a sour grapes. I'm upset the Seahawks didn't get him, so I'm saying this is a bad trade. I don't think it's a bad trade. I think it's they're in a slightly better position wide receiver-wise than they were last year. Obviously, Julio Jones is a bit of a step up from Corey Davis. But I don't think Corey Davis was a bad wide receiver, obviously. I think he had a great year last year, obviously. And I just don't think that the offense that they're going to run is going to do enough that Julio is going to be some ridiculous piece that turns them into the Kansas City Chiefs all of a sudden. Like, I don't think that's what they're doing. And so if you're saying, hey, we got a 32-year-old wide receiver to come in and be, I guess what, a red zone threat? But really, you look at his career with Atlanta, and he's not like a red zone threat kind of guy. Like, is he good in the red zone? Sure, he's fine. But it's not like, I'm trying to think, it's not like having Gronk in the red zone, right? Like, it's not so ridiculously mismatched that it's not like having Megatron in the red zone. Like, he's a decent red zone wide receiver, but I don't see him being just some piece that automatically makes this Titans team super, super good on offense. I largely think they're going to be exactly a team they were last year. Maybe a little bit better on offense, but you mentioned the defensive problems. On paper, this seems like an absolute win and a really, really good trade, and it might be. But I'm skeptical to think that this really does much for them.
They improved in the position because who's going to say that Julio isn't an improvement over Corey Davis?
Right.
Even though Corey Davis had a pretty dang good year last year. But, it's not like a drastic improvement considering what Corey did last season.
Right. Well,
and I don't know.
And look, at the end of the day, Ryan Tannehill is still your quarterback. And he's been great the last couple years. And this is not a shot at Ryan Tannehill. What is the limits of that offense? And the limits of that offense are the same that they were last year. And that is, you have 2 good receivers and a very, very good running back and a quarterback that is good within the system. I think that's very important to remember, is that part of what has made Ryan Tannehill so good the last couple of years is that he has been a good quarterback within the Tennessee Titans system. And if you try and turn Ryan Tannehill into Patrick Mahomes, if you try and turn Ryan Tannehill into Russell Wilson, although they're fairly similar quarterbacks the way their offense uses them, if you try and turn Ryan Tannehill even into, let's say, Deshaun Watson in terms of just let's wide open throw the football, like, you're not going to see success. And there's not enough skill in that entire wide receiver core, and including the tight end core, to really, really do that with your offense. So again, I'm looking at it from is the wide receiver core better from top to bottom? Yes. Would I trade, if you ask me, would I trade Corey Davis straight up? If I lose Corey Davis and get Julio Jones, do I like my wide receiver class a little bit better? Absolutely. if you have me look at that offense and say, do I think all of a sudden this offense is way better than they were? No, and that's simple and short, as quick to the point as I can be on that. And so, man, I think if you're Julio and you're looking to get to a team that gives you a shot to win a Super Bowl, I don't think you made the right move. If you're asking for a trade, if you want to get out of Atlanta to have a shot to win a Super Bowl before you kind of reach the back end of your career, and he's not at the back end of his career, but he is definitely on the backside of his career at 32 for the type of receiver he is, with the injury history that he's starting to mount up a little bit. Tennessee ain't it, bud. Like, you needed to go somewhere that gave you a little bit better of a chance to win a Super Bowl, because I don't think Tennessee is doing it.
Yeah, like, Tennessee was never just a wide receiver away from the Super Bowl. Like,
Right.
That wasn't what was stopping them. Now, you could argue coming into this year that it was going to stop them because Josh Reynolds isn't a number 2 wide receiver. So, I mean, yeah, I see why you make the trade. But you also could have addressed the wide receiver position earlier in the draft than you did, if that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because there were some quality guys in the draft that you could have spent less money on, if that's what you wanted to do, and you could have just made a trade for a defensive player. Because we're both in agreement, like, this trade is not what needed to happen in order for Tennessee to make the Super Bowl.
Right.
I mean, it just wasn't. Like, it made your team better, but you're kind of just in the same spot that you were going in last season. Maybe a little bit better, but not Super Bowl. I feel like we're on the tail end of this conversation, so I want to play a little game.
Okay. Let's do it.
It is, I'm probably going to do this for all teams because I have found little nuggets while looking at the Titans roster, like, oh, I didn't know he was there. So I'm gonna propose a trivia question for you, as long as you're not looking at the roster right now.
Okay.
So obviously we know Ryan Tannehill is on the roster. That's
Yes.
a given. Can you name the other 2 quarterbacks on roster for Tennessee,
Ooh.
according to their website?
Okay, give me
One of them, I'm pretty sure he was on their roster last year.
Logan Woodside.
That is correct.
Toledo, right? He played at Toledo?
He played at Toledo.
Okay, the last one.
The last
or
one.
the third one. No hints. I don't want to.
Okay. No hints.
Okay.
Come on, people.
Let me think this through. Well, okay. Let me narrow it down. It's a young guy, right? I'm assuming. A younger guy. Youngish.
He's been in the. Do you want to know how long he's been in the league?
Yeah, give me a.
He's been in the league for 4 years.
Deshaun Kaiser.
Bingo.
Ooh! Yes.
It's bingo.
Yes. You know what? Give me Logan Woodside over Deshaun Kaiser, though. If I'm making that depth chart,
Yeah, obviously.
give me Logan Woodside.
If they only bring 2, I'm sure Logan has got the edge because he's been on the roster for a year.
Right, and he's a little bit more. He's a little bit more similar to Ryan Tannehill. So if I've got to replace a guy, I'm going to go that. You got another one for me, or is that it?
I mean, the quarterbacks is always more fun. The only thing else that I kind of was like, oh, I didn't know he was here. Like, just looking at more recent draft classes, like, maybe I just didn't realize it or forgot, like tight ends. I didn't realize Jared Pinkney was on the team from Vanderbilt last year. Also didn't realize that Kalijah Lipscomb was on the Titans. Both
Ooh.
2 Vandy boys, so they're just in their backyard. We'll probably maybe we can do this every week for quarterbacks.
Pick a random team and make me guess.
Pick a random team, like, obviously, all right.
But
Obviously, Like, obviously, Mahomes is on the Chiefs roster. What about the other quarterbacks?
So this almost isn't fair though, because I haven't bought Madden in several years, and my backup quarterback game is probably a little bit off.
Probably.
I
But you also just nailed this one. So
well, I knew Logan Woodside, and then when you gave me
figured you would know that one. It was more the holy crap. Deshaun Kaiser's still in the league.
Yeah, Deshaun Kaiser a little bit tough. Joke's on you. I'm going to start studying the rosters hardcore for the next couple weeks. So we'll do that. All right, Patrick.
Or people like, all right, we're not going to do quarterbacks today. I'm going to throw you off for a game. What about centers? What about all the centers on the roster?
If you get off of quarterbacks, I got no shot. I used to probably be able to name a good chunk of the rosters. Period, just from playing Madden all the time.
How much Madden?
And doing fantasy drafts and trading team. I used to just spend because when I play Madden, I usually play franchise mode, and I would pretty much only do off-season stuff. Like, I barely played any games. I would play like the Super Bowl, but I would basically just draft and then make trades, and I would always try and start with like Charlie Whitehurst as my quarterback, or somebody really. Who's the guy? A couple like JT O'Sullivan, or
oh my goodness, what a pull!
Gio Carmazzi, like guys like that. I would basically go through and find like the worst quarterback and be like, I'm going to win a Super Bowl with the worst quarterback in the game, and see what I could do. So I would basically just do that and then go draft/sign the fastest running back and the fastest wide receiver. And that would be my entire offense. That's how I ran Madden.
Completely fair.
All right.
Also, I'm going to mention a story. I don't know if we were doing pods when this happened. I don't think we were, but we're still on the Titans. So I'm going to mention this story to you, and I want you to tell me just how absurd this is. So this happened back like at the end of May. So this probably was like the start of our break. So Janoris Jenkins, at the end of May, had his Rolls Royce stolen from the Atlanta airport. Also, this is not done. It got stolen from the airport, and it was in economy parking. Why are you parking a Rolls Royce in economy parking?
I'll say this: why are you parking a Rolls Royce at the airport, anyways? First off, why are you buying a Rolls Royce? Because they're ugly.
Not a fan either. I don't get the appeal.
But I mean, outside of that, take an Uber or hire a car service. I mean, do something. Don't leave your car parked at the airport. Like, that's on you.
Don't park Rolls Royce in the airport, anyways. You make a valid point. But if you're gonna pull up and flex in your 2016 Rolls Royce,
at least go to valet.
It's old, okay? Stop flexing that old car. Why are you parking just out in the open? You're just asking for it to get stolen.
Yeah.
You probably left it unlocked too.
Or at least busted into.
Yeah.
So what Patrick's saying is stay out the airport with your Rolls Royce.
Look, if you don't have like a giant chunk of metal, don't park in economy parking.
Yeah,
that's asking.
You can't park in economy parking unless your car is at least 4 years old.
Exactly. Like if your car can stick out, if you're about to park and it's sticking out from the cars around you, you need to go spend the extra however much. Go park in a more secure parking area.
If you're gonna park in economy parking, it's got to be at least 4 years old and have cost less than $75,000 when you bought it.
Yeah.
That's the rules. We don't make the rules. That's just the rules.
I didn't make the rule here. I have a crypto portfolio of $7. Do you think I made the rule? No.
Not at all. All right. Speaking of Patrick, let's get this one over with. Let's go and end it on a positive note. It is time to treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
yourself. The best day of the year.
That's right. It's the best day of the year. It is time to treat yourself. So, Patrick, I'm going to go first. I'll start off with a treat yourself. My treat yourself, this is going to sound weird maybe to start at the start of this, but I'll get there. My treat yourself goes out to Denmark soccer player Christian Eriksen.
Treat yourself.
Now, obviously, I'm not saying treat yourself because you had a heart attack on the soccer pitch. Obviously, I'm saying treat yourself because you have survived, and we're all happy that we didn't watch somebody die on TV. And look, I don't know if you saw that. It was kind of a super scary moment because he just kind of wobbled and went down. And, obviously they had to actually get out a defibrillator and bring him back. And so that's like super, super scary. And potentially most likely career ending for him. And he's a great player. So it's, obviously sad from that standpoint. But he gets to treat himself, if nothing else, because he is still alive, still kicking. Still, at least seems like he's doing fairly good for having, had a heart attack, or at least that's kind of what they said on a soccer field. So, Christian Eriksen, treat yourself there. Who gets to treat yourself for you?
I'm gonna go I've got two. I'm gonna go a little off the wall in these.
Okay.
So the first treat yourself is going to be to 7 potential suitors.
Treat yourself.
Because there are 7 job openings in the NBA right now.
Whew, yeah, a lot of them.
And some of them are pretty nice jobs.
Okay, without going through, name them all off and then tell me what job you would want the most.
So we've got the Celtics, we've got the Mavericks, we've got the Pacers, the Pelicans, the Magic, the Blazers, and the Wizards. So the job I would obviously want is Boston.
Oh, interesting.
I know you probably want something like the Pelicans or Dallas.
No, I want Dallas. Give me Luka.
I know you want... That would be my number 2. The reason I would want Boston is because they have 2 stars on the team versus I really only count Luka. Luka is one of the faces of the NBA, so it's not like that's you only got one.
I agree with you on the talent quotient, Patrick, but I'm going to tell you why I want the Dallas job instead. Do you know how long Rick Carlisle was in Dallas? And do you know how some of those teams were absolutely dog garbage and Mark Cuban didn't fire him? Give me that job.
Yeah, you've got security, and it's not like he was fired. Carlisle was like, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is a very valid point because Dallas for a while was just dog. And somehow he was there for another year. So I see your point there. Now, my second treat yourself.
Okay. Again,
a little off the wall. My second treat yourself goes to potentially every Major League Baseball batter.
Treat yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Because pitchers can no longer use their spider track and their sticky stuff. Which means we might see more bombs. So maybe all of us treat ourselves.
Here's my thought on this. And I actually think Major League Baseball went about this the wrong way. I'm
shocked. They did something wrong. What a shock.
Right. Well, I think... So here's the thing. What do pitchers use that for? What are they using spider tack for? What are they using rosin and sunscreen for? They're using it to control the ball a little bit better. Now, if I were pitchers, the first thing I would do is I would come back and say, whoa. This is a health and safety thing. Like, you need to let us use this. Better control means less players getting hit. Less players getting hit means less injuries. Less players that you have to worry about getting hit in the face and dying. Not that happens often, but I actually think what would maybe be a little bit better to do would be allow them within reason. Spider tack might be a little bit off the wall, but giving them the ability, if batters can use pine tar, like it's kind of
That's
the
my
weird,
argument.
right? Like if you're gonna let batters use pine tar, like yes, you ought to kind of let pitchers are kind of already at a little bit of a disadvantage to some degree because batters. I would
And on top
almost
of that, like I don't know if they are now, but at some point those balls were juiced.
right. I would almost say maybe robot umps would be a better thing, just because if you can get a more consistent control and maybe doing something with the strike zone, because I think baseball. Now you're making me go longer than I wanted to, and we're going to be kind of slightly negative. Baseball's problem is that they mess with things that don't need to be messed with. All the unwritten rules and all the things that they think that they address that they do make me not want to watch a baseball game. I want to see home runs. I want to see strikeouts. So what I want is I want pitchers to be able to do everything they can to do what they need to do, and I want to see batters be able to do everything that they can do to do what they do. I want to see strikeouts. I want to see home runs. I want to see fun baseball. I want to see bat flips. I want to see pitchers getting excited when they strike somebody out. Modernize the game. Have fun with it instead of being all dribby drab Tony La Russa's around here. Like, let's make baseball fun again. And you know what? Maybe viewers will pay more attention. Maybe you don't have to worry about pace of play so much if you just do things that young people, that the baseball players themselves want to do. If you just do things that make the game exciting, as opposed to worrying about this and that nobody cares about. I don't care if a pitcher uses something that makes him slightly grip the ball better, that puts slightly more RPMs on a ball, that maybe makes a curveball dip. I don't care. I want to see that. I want to see Barry Zito type curveballs, and then I want to see Mark McGwire depth home runs. Like, give me Shohei Ohtani hitting an 800-foot bomb and then coming out and throwing a curveball that goes from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock in a split second. I want to see that. I don't want to see pitchers throwing wild pitches because they can't grip a baseball.
I don't really see anything wrong with the whole foreign substance for grips. There's so many things that batters use even other than pine tar. And you're going to tell me the only thing that batters can use is a bag of chalk? No.
Right.
Like, what? I agree maybe spider track is a little too much, but you got to let them even, if somebody wants to use pine tar, let them use pine tar. If they use some sunscreen, what's wrong with sunscreen? Maybe they don't want to get sunburned. It's hot out there. Let them use sunscreen.
Right.
Let them put some sunscreen on that dome. Go for it.
Man, if I was a pitcher, I would say, hey, I would come up and I'd be like, hey man, like, look, I've got a history of skin cancer in my family, so I've got to like hardcore put on sunscreen, and if a little bit gets on a ball, I can't help it.
If I were someone like Dustin May, I don't know if you know who Dustin May is. No. He pitches for the Dodgers, and he's got a bunch of hair on that noggin, like curly afro, redhead.
Oh yeah. I know who you're talking about.
He's a pasty white boy too. So I would be like, "Do you see this face?
Yeah.
You're gonna tell me I can't use sunscreen? I want to die out there."
Yep.
I'm gonna pitch one game, and you're gonna have to scratch me for the next two because I'm sunburned.
Right. And once again, it's baseball addressing stuff that just I don't think has been that big of an issue. Like, I'm not. I mean, granted,
I think it's a couple of hitters who are upset that they can't hit the ball.
Well, hit the ball. I mean,
that's their fault.
Yeah, get better. That's kind of where I sit on all this. Is like, there's being tangentially paying attention. Tangential. That's hard to say. Paying attention to baseball. Like, as little as I probably do during the regular season, like, man, it's just, if the casual fan is not hearing about these issues, if the casual fan doesn't know that this issue exists, you probably don't need to mess with addressing it. Like, it's probably just something you can let go, that you can just say, hey, it's baseball. You don't have a lot of people going, man, I really hate that I can not tell that a pitcher has sunscreen and rosin, and that changes the ball flight slightly from the pitcher to the catcher. We're seeing plenty of home runs still. Like, it's not affecting the fly to the ball once it leaves. I just, again, addressing things that don't need to be addressed. But Patrick, we're going to address the end of the show because it's time for us to end for this week. If you're following along on YouTube, you have obviously been able to see all of the social media things. But if you're just listening on the podcast, number one, go subscribe on YouTube. You don't even have to watch over there if you just want to podcast it, but just go ahead and subscribe. It takes a half